I'd like to welcome everybody to CKJ Crypto News. Guys, I have multiple requests to cut this video down to the part where Joe Katz was at Consensus 2019. Dave Schwartz spoke at Consensus and basically was on stage speaking at Consensus. Now, after he spoke, I did get an opportunity to ask Dave a few questions, and he did hang out for about 20 minutes to a half hour. Everybody asked me, could I cut this down to where he's just doing this part of the interview. So, guys, I hope you enjoy this part. Joe Katz is a super intelligent guy. It was an honor to meet him and just talk with him. I'd like to thank everybody for tuning into this video. If you guys can please smash some thumbs up, hit the subscribe. It means the world to me also. I hope you enjoy this quick interview with Joe Katz. You know, ask him a few questions. Somebody else ask him a few questions. Thank you for your time. Much love. Mahalo.
About namely consistency and liveness. So consistency says that all of the honest nodes must agree on the log. Okay. It could be like the network has stability and your network is a little bit faster than mine. Nonetheless, at the end of the day, we agree on what is going to be our now, liveness says that whenever you write a speed, your transaction should be incorporated in every honest node view,
Dave, any chance you got time for one question though?
I got a couple of minutes. I got a whole bunch of people I want to talk about. I just want to get away from this talk because I don't want to disturb.
Oh, okay, great.
We're far enough away. Go far enough away not to disturb.
Good Lord, you got a whole train of people with you. Holy moly, guys! Look at all these people that came to see Dave. The whole room came with them. Holy moly! Whoa! Look, the whole room emptied out to follow Dave. Joe Katz, babe. Yeah, he said I live streamed. Yeah, he just said I live streamed it.
I wish I had more time to talk about it.
So this whole hooking the path forward is exactly what IOSDP protocol does. You can hook it IRC, which is fine. So we have this big project with Berkeley trying to help musicians and artists get paid recently. And so one of the big issues is that when Spotify plays my music, right, I have no indication that if they play 10,000 times, I only get less than 50 cents.
Yeah.
Could micropayments be used so that when they play my music,
yeah, and you can cut out intermediaries too, because the problem is right now, even if Spotify wanted to pay you directly, it's impractical for them to do it. Right, and those are, although they are taking a lot of your money, they're also essential because the payment infrastructure is so inefficient that there's simply no way that they could, when they
Holy moly, guys! Dave Schwartz live.
There's a couple different, but one of the things that I wanted to make clear in my talk is that micropayments aren't just about micropayments, but yes, they're also about micropayments. I sort of ignored the obvious, because one of the problems that I have is when people say, what are micropayments good for? And the typical answer that you get is a micropayment application. And there are good micropayment applications. Your example is probably the best one I've heard. I usually have done things like, I could pay to go through a door. It's like, why would I want to pay to go through a door? Or like, I could pay the car in front of me if I'm in a hurry to pull over. Like,
and it also applies also to compositions, right? Because right now, when you write some music and a band wants to perform it, they have to go to a publishing house and say, like, what is this thing? It's like crazy. Look it up.
You could imagine if like I was talking about email, and I said, what's email good? You could ask me, like, what's email good for? And I would have a hard time answering you. Like, I would say, like, well, no one's ever going to like send a wedding invitation by email, right? That needs to be personalized. And if you order something, like, you order something to be shipped to you, well, that can't be. Well, what does that leave for email? Like maybe 30%, but of course, all of the applications were things that we could not have.
They said Dave is Einstein's son.
That we couldn't do before. That's interesting, right? And that's a good example. But the point I want to make in my talk is that if we build really good micropayments, not only can we do micropayment applications, which is like the obvious thing, but we could literally take over the world of payments. It's a multi-trillion-dollar business that doesn't work for a significant fraction of the people who use it. But what's also good about that example is that you have these middlemen who are like they're often portrayed as like evil rent seekers, right? They're just taking, but you don't have the technology to exclude them. It's like, okay, well, I don't, but you know, why can't I just sell directly to Spotify? Because the amount of money that they would have to send you, that probably cost them a couple of dollars to make a payment, right? And they would have to aggregate it over periods of time. They'd have to make millions of payments. Well, 1 billion Interledger payments took place last year. You know, and it's not even a blip in what the system is, what the technology is capable of. I'm a huge.
So maybe I've talked to Evan, you know,
Evan Schwartz?
in Boston, but he's too busy with the Interledger project itself.
Yeah, so for those who don't know, Evan Schwartz and Stephen Thomas are the co-creators of the Interledger protocol. They were both working at Ripple at the time.
Just disclosure, Ripple was one of our early sponsors at MIT.
They moved.
I'm biased.
So they moved on to Coil now. And what I want to say one thing about Coil, that something that a lot of people don't realize about Coil. So Coil's business model for today is you send them $5 a month, and then as you browse the internet, they stream micropayments to the owners and operators of the websites that you go to.
Drops.
So ideally, like you would go to, let's say, Wikipedia, and instead of seeing a page asking you to donate, you would see a thing that says thank you for donating. And some other websites might have premium content.
Wow.
But you might think, like, well, what does that have to do with micropayments? What does that have to? What is the innovation? Like, anyone could have done that at any time. The innovation is the website that you go to has no relationship with Coil whatsoever if they don't want to. They simply put a tag in their page that says to your browser, "I'm accepting micropayments at this address." Coil is a sort of micropayment provider on the customer side, but anybody could do that. I could, if I wanted to, with no relationship with Coil whatsoever, stream money to the websites that I go to using the Interledger protocol. And I would get the same thank you for donating, I would get the same access to premium content that a Coil user would get. So it is a truly open system that can only work with a micropayments platform. The reason it can only work with a micropayments platform is like if Coil was the only web monetization provider, it's not a problem. I'm sending $5 to Coil. That's not a micropayment. And Coil could send, $50,000 to Wikipedia on behalf of all that. You wouldn't need micropayments. But then Coil would be like the Amazon of web monetization. And that's not the innovation. The innovation is anybody can be a web monetization provider. Anybody can accept the web monetization without having to enter into a contractual agreement with every web monetization provider. It is a truly decentralized and open protocol. And that's, I think, the groundbreaking aspect. And that's something that you can only do with micropayments. But even if you don't think the use case is just for micropayments, I hope I can convince some people that you put enough it's like someone might say when I propose the internet, what good is sending a packet of data? Well, sending one packet is billions of packets.
What's the minimum size of the micropayment?
What I wanted to ask, how micro is micro?
You had a number.
It's like the drops with the XRP Tipbot.
On the XRP ledger, you could theoretically send 1/1,000,000th of an XRP, one drop.
Yeah.
But you'd pay a 10-drop fee to do it.
Yeah, so what's the optimal?
So it depends on. So there's two things that you could do. So you could send a direct payment, and if you say, well, I don't want to pay a fee of more than 1%, then 100 millionths of an XRP would be the minimum. But we also have something called the payment channel, which is used when you layer ILP on top of the ledger. And the way a payment channel works is I lock up some XRP, and then I give you claims against that XRP off the ledger. And there's an interesting point about our implementation of payment channels, which is I can put more money in the payment channel anytime I want. So if I want to pay him, it's just a couple of payments. I could put one XRP in that payment channel, 50 cents, 40 cents, whatever. And then if I decide I'm doing more business with him, I can just put more XRP in that payment channel. And let's say it's a couple hours later and we've accumulated a significant balance and he wants to use that balance for something. He can take what he's already owed out of the payment channel without disrupting our ongoing flow in the payment channel. One of the things that surprised me when I looked at technologies like Lightning or payment channels or these higher level technologies is I thought that they would make the features of the ledgers irrelevant. It's like if we're talking payment channels, what difference does it make that Bitcoin transactions are expensive or it can take 10 minutes? It turns out that the reverse is the case. The parameters of the underlying ledger are extremely critical. So for example, if I want to set up a payment channel to him, and I don't know how much I'm going to need to pay him necessarily, if it takes a Bitcoin transaction, that means I'm waiting an hour and I have to decide how much I'm going to, and he may need to write. But if I can set up a payment channel to him in a couple of seconds on the XRP ledger, and if it turns out I don't need it, I can close it. Or I can put just a minimum amount of money in it and then I can add more later. And at most it's 5 or 10 seconds rather than an hour. So one of the reasons I like Bitcoin is rather than building on top of the crappy existing financial plumbing, they ripped it up and started over. You see efforts in interoperability that are building on top of systems that have, it's like, oh, we don't need to make Bitcoin handle more transactions per second. It's likely we can do that at a second layer. I mean, that's kind of how we got to.
But like, what about like the XRP Tipbot though? It has like what, 1 million drops in it, and we send drops all day on Twitter. Is that like the same thing?
That is. That's an upper layer, and I think what's going to happen is I think more and more value is going to move to those upper layers. It's a little bit depressing when it comes to like truly centralized custodial services, but I don't mean to discourage people who are building those upper layers. We need those upper scaling layers. Every transaction on a public ledger is inherently expensive because everybody has to process it, everybody has to store it, and if you imagine any public blockchain that did 1 million transactions per second, running a full node would be extremely difficult. Very few people would be able to do it. It is a public good. So anything we can get off the public ledger, as long as we can keep the public ledger open and accessible. If we get to the point where it costs, $1,000 a week to run a full node, then for practical purposes, that lowest layer is not accessible. So I think the priority one is keep that lowest layer reasonably accessible, so people aren't forced to use like custodial services because they can't afford to access the lowest layer. But for practical purposes, like let's build the best next layer so we can, ideally not custodial, not large enough, like maybe, but even if they are, my philosophy is like we need to grow the ecosystem and everything is better than nothing. So even if it's a custodial service, even if it's really locked down, even if they have like, at least they're still using the same assets and they're increasing the value of those lowest layers. So I still see that as a good thing, and I really do think it's important to be as inclusive as possible, because we don't want to be a toxic space. We want to be a space that attracts talent. I've said this before. At one time, like if you were cool, you worked at Microsoft. If people worked at Microsoft, oh, wow, this is a person who knows what they're doing. And then there was times like, wait, why did you work at Microsoft? Like, was Apple didn't want you? Right? And then there was a time when like cool people worked at Facebook, and then it was Google, and then it was then it was Uber for a little while. And now it's like, oh my God, you're still working at Uber? What's wrong with you, right? We want smart people in this field. We have a lot of problems that we need solved, and we are chasing them away with toxicity. And we need to stop that.
I agree. How do you feel about the ecosystem now today from maybe a few years ago? I mean, do you feel like we've had a lot of growth where we're going in the right direction?
Yeah, I think the much as painful as the bear year was for me, I think that shakeout got a lot of the, I have a white paper, give me $100 million people out, or the people who are just like, I heard that like this streets are raining money, I want to get in this field. People who have no interest in building anything or even understanding the technology, or I think a lot of those people got shaken out, and I think also it proved that there's more to this than just a speculative element, that there actually is an underlying technology, that is an actual problem that we're solving.
Exactly.
And so I think that's really, really good. I have to say, sometimes I feel like things are taking forever, and other times I feel it's amazing we've gotten as much accomplished in this little time. I think the truth is somewhere in between those two things. But I think there are problems that we can only solve together. Regulatory is a good example. No one company is going to be able to solve some of the regulatory problems. And just on the regulatory front, it's not bad laws that are the problem. There are some bad laws that are a problem, but the biggest problem is uncertainty. People who don't know what they need to do to comply with the law, because the law is like, for example, there's a law that says that if you take custody of someone's money, like there's certain things happen. Well, when do you do that? If I open a payment channel to you and I send you a claim to that, have you taken custody of that money, or is it still mine? Or like nobody knows what the laws mean, and there's a serious risk that people will be told, oh, you should have known that you were breaking this law. And so we looked at that law and we honestly could not figure out. And no one's going to put millions or billions of dollars into a business when there are those kinds of risks. So that's I think still the biggest problem. I think I should also point out it is really hard to get bank accounts. That's another problem. There are hundreds of legal businesses every day that can't operate or open because they either can't get a bank account or lose their bank accounts. Some change has to happen to that. And that is on the government to fix. These look like private banks making private decisions about what customers they'll do business with, but that's not what's happening. What's happening is it's legal uncertainty and it's legal risk that they're mitigating. and it is on the government to fix the laws so that legal businesses can get banked. And I think if you talk to people in this business, they'll tell you regulatory uncertainty and the inability to get banking connections are the biggest obstacles.
But is it a catch? The banks also have uncertainty, so they don't want to touch this stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it's a catch-22. It's
So-
a circular problem.
But on the bright side, the nice thing about that kind of problem is that it unwinds very quickly, right?
Yeah.
It's like if you have a chicken and egg problem, that kind of sucks if you don't have a chicken or an egg. But if you can get either one of them, then the problem goes away very, very rapidly. So it's the same thing. Like if we could reduce some of that regulatory uncertainty, then maybe some of the banks would be a little bit more open.
There are two major problems. One, the correspondence, the banks. The second one are also foreign fiat. That's it. I can tell you that globally, and I live in Panama. So we are currently having a lot of trouble. We're on an exchange platform where we want to launch, but to open accounts have been almost impossible.
Yeah.
And we're going
I hear you.
through all type of jurisdictions, okay? Soft jurisdictions, regular jurisdictions, and it's the same thing.
I know.
And I think
You know,
there's
we
a lot
have
of fear.
we
There's
have
a lot of
banks.
fear.
We have banks that will partner with us. Like they send their
hear
payments
you.
on our platform, but they won't let us open an account. But they know everything about us, right? Like
Open
they,
an account with
There
you.
are some
right,
options.
they've done all of their due diligence, right? They looked at us very closely. They obviously wouldn't route their payments through software that we provide. Like they know everything that's about. It's like, oh yeah, but we can't take the regulatory risk of letting you open a bank account with us.
Revolut is an interesting entity. It's a digital bank in UK and also operates in Montenegro, and it has a solution also for enterprises. So you should look into it, and they are really quick.
I will say one of the things that a lot of our customers on the RippleNet side like is that they don't have to go through intermediaries. They can, if there are two companies that want to exchange messages and funds.
Let's go direct there.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, exactly.
The only thing is that you need to go fiat. Again,
When you what?
when you want to go fiat, when you need the money.
Yeah, so finding the last mile. So the same problem with XRapid. So XRapid is our product that settles fiat payments with cryptocurrency liquidity. And I thought that the cryptocurrency liquidity would be the biggest problem with that because I thought, exchanges have huge spreads. And the biggest problem is the last mile. The biggest problem is getting the fiat once it's at that exchange to the final customer, because whoever makes that payment has to be some entity other than the entity that's making the sort of outer payment. And what's interesting about that is that's not a cryptocurrency transaction, right? So like if I'm using US dollars to deliver Mexican pesos, and he buys the Mexican pesos with XRP. But now he sold me his Mexican pesos. From my point of view, it doesn't matter that he bought it with XRP. I just need to deliver it to the end user. But that is an incredibly difficult thing to do because the company that makes that last payment has all kinds of exposure from the originator. And so you kind of have to settle that like company by company by company. And there's, we're trying to operate in Mexico and the Philippines and Brazil, and so we have to knock those things down jurisdiction by jurisdiction. It's exhausting, but it's funny that the cryptocurrency issues are not the biggest problems. Like I thought that like the cryptocurrency ecosystem would be the problem, and it's not. It's everything else that's the problem. Like why don't enterprises use Bitcoin? Bitcoin's not the problem, right? It's everything else.
That's what the banks are told me. They say, I don't have any issue with your exchange with your cryptocurrency. You're going to have the issue, okay, once you want to realize that money.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
and it doesn't matter what type of supports or documents you give them. Okay?
No,
it's just an imposition.
I wish I could tell you some of our stories on that same front, but yeah, everybody in this business.
Turn off the recording.
It doesn't.
Oh, this is
matter.
live.
And banks have like I think like large banks don't have this
1,000
problem. Yes,
people.
they have the exact same problem. We have this problem. Everybody in this business has this problem, and I don't know. I don't.
We're trying to launch.
And you know what?
The whole
It's
region
not,
of Latin.
it's not big banks trying to protect their monopoly. It's not so much it's overly simplistic to say, oh, these evil banks like don't want the cryptocurrency community to thrive. They probably don't, but that's not so much what's happening here, because when you have a person who's an account manager at a bank and they're like, I'd love to have this customer's going to run millions of dollars and it'll be one of my accounts. Like they're not part of some global conspiracy. Like while they're making that decision, but what's happening is that they have to look at the downside. This is one customer that could potentially like blow up on them, and in many cases, the conduct for those fines is egregious, so that's okay. Like, even if you're knowingly helping terrorists get money, and there's hundreds of millions of dollars of fine, I'm not going to say, hey, the fine for helping terrorists launder money shouldn't be in hundreds of millions of dollars. That's not that's not the point. The point is like, but you don't know, could that exchange be helping terrorists launder money? Like, could you be the person here? It's not going to make you a whole lot of money. It's one customer. Could you be the person who said yes to the thing that winds up helping some terrorists launder money?
So the legislation, if I focus on this interchange between, virtual to fiat, I mean, that's really the problem point, right? This
And over-regulation.
Yeah, and regulatory uncertainty and fear of enforcement of vague regulations, and it's a lot. And that's something we have to work together on. But you know why that's not happening? I'll tell you why that's not happening. Because there's a lot of scams out there. There's a lot of cryptocurrency scams, let's be honest, we all know that. And nobody can draw a bright line between, nobody can say, like, here's the reason why I'm absolutely nothing like BitConnect. Like, there's a simple rule that you can follow, and you can apply that test, and you can say, these are the scammers, and these are the... It's not that simple. It just is not that simple. And so, that's not to say that there aren't things that are scams and things that aren't. There are, but it's not a simple test. You have to look in great detail, and it's hard to write a regulation that says if you're a scammer, you can't do this. Like, right?
You know what's the principal issue here is that even that we are disruptive and whatever you want, okay, we need to auto-regulate at some point, and that sometimes is a paradox because it's a principle that we were questioning it. Why we have to do this
Okay,
type of
I'll ask him.
regulations in order to put order in our own ecosystem.
But it's the same problem, though. Like, if you care about Ethereum, you probably want to approach regulators in a consortium with Bitcoin. But do you want to approach regulators in a consortium with a coin that's 50 further down on the, like, there's this sort of continuum of like the ones that you almost can't question and the ones like, right, so how do you self-regulate when we can't? And the other problem is the sort of fake news problem. Like, it's really hard to figure out if how real a cryptocurrency project is. Unless you have a week to devote to looking at the code and doing background investigation, the cost of admission to figure out. I remember I tried to figure out what was going on in the Bitcoin block size debate. I know Bitcoin as well as anyone. I'm connected to many people in this industry. I spent about 3 hours trying to figure out what was going on, and I came out knowing less than I think I went in with. I'm like, I don't know are there good guys and bad guys here? Is it that simple? Maybe I don't. I literally could not figure out what the hell was going on. And so if I couldn't do it in a couple of hours, I mean, even personally knowing many of the people involved, and I still couldn't figure out, was this a black and white thing? Is this a genuine technical disagreement? Okay,
let's
but I
just
mean,
say it's not the block size.
There were passionate technical arguments, but then again, when there are passionate technical arguments, it could be because people feel passionately about technical things.
That's 20% of the issue.
And it could be because, I make money if we pick this decision, and I lose money if we pick this one. So I'm going to marshal the strongest technical arguments in the position. Yeah, I mean, and of course, this space is intimately connected with money. So, yeah.
Dave, I apologize. I got 1,200 people here, and they're really spamming this chat. They want to know if you can just tell us anything about PolySign at all.
I'm under a very strict NDA. I will just say I'm really excited about what's going on at PolySign.
Okay.
I really wish. I wish. Again, it always comes down to we're doing some really cool stuff.
Okay.
It's not what most of the people have been speculating about. I can probably say that. It is an institutional custody company. But I probably shouldn't say anything else. But I wait for the day when we get out of stealth mode and I can talk about some of the stuff that we're doing, but that day is not today.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Dave.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Dave. I really appreciate that.
Sure. Yeah. Anyone wants pictures? Happy to do them.
Oh my gosh, you guys, man. I wasn't gonna ask him that question because, I didn't want to be pushy because I already know it was gonna come under the NDA thing. But then when the guy donated 200, then everybody started saying, "Oh."